Welcome back into our off-season hot stove countdown to opening day. I'm the voice of the Bisons, Pat Mellicaro. We enjoyed bringing you our conversation with Joe Sclafani last week to preview some of the prospects and players that will be here in Buffalo this year. This week, we wanted to talk to Shi Davidi, the baseball columnist for Sportsnet, who is actually in Arizona right now, taking part in the World Baseball Classic. He's been down in Dunedin this year and get his thoughts on not only the Bisons' upcoming season, but also what it means to the impact of the Toronto Blue Jays as they continue to make their progress, not only towards a postseason berth in 2023, but also, hopefully, a long run into October for the Bison's parent club. Shi, thanks for taking some time to join us. I know you're down in Arizona right now for the World Baseball Classic. That's where I kind of want to start with you today, and kind of your first impressions of what has been an impressive performance by Team Canada early on in the tournament, and kind of the Blue Jay prospects that are littered all throughout the WBC.
Yeah, for sure. And the three of them on Team Canada, led by Otto Lopez, who's got a shot to be the 26th guy on the Blue Jays roster by the time camp ends. But he's been a really steady contributor for the Canadians. It's only been one game so far, but it's also had a couple nice exhibition games as well. And somebody who's shown a bit of offensive flair, the ability to move around the diamonds, going to be the shortstop for Canada, but he's got a shot there. Deshaun Brown is a young outfielder, and Damiano Palmigiani, an infielder who can play the outfield as well. And he's got a chance to contribute a little bit as well. Both of them have had some nice moments, and you can definitely see the skill, and they're soaking up the surroundings around them. And that's part of what Canada likes to do with its young players. Although because of some of the guys that they weren't able to have access to, a few young players on the team are getting perhaps a little bit more run than might have otherwise been expected.
I know on the pitching staff-wise, there's a lot of great stories. Someone like Matt Brash, who went to college up here in Western New York at Niagara University, but also John Axford, who went to their rival at Canisius, and his story of getting back to playing in this tournament after undergoing Tommy John a little over a year ago. So the nice mix of the youth and the veterans who have had a presence here in Buffalo as well.
Yeah, an absolutely amazing return for John Axford. I mean, this guy's going to be 40 on April 1st, and he was up to 94.5 in his second game back in recovery from a second Tommy John. And, he's kind of joked that how much more he's able to get out of his arm. And, his first game back, it was an exhibition against Chicago Cubs. And, I saw him afterwards, and he looked down at his elbow. It was like, oh, still attached. But he hasn't been sure what he's going to have, how he's going to be, but he's been able to get on the mound and just be really effective. And to think about anybody at almost 40 years old throwing mid 90s, it's hard to believe, but especially a guy who's been through what he's been through physically, just really remarkable.
And I wonder, as spring training games are live action, you get in games, and you're able to get innings under your belt. But I wonder how much different it is in the WBC to actually play in front of a raucous crowd, or Spencer Horwitz playing for Team Israel as well. So there's other players, throughout the WBC to get that kind of real in-game, Game 7 type feel, and how you can carry that over maybe into the start of the season.
It's a really fascinating tournament because you've got the small sample size randomness of any small concentration of games, and then you multiply that with the variance you get at spring training performances, because guys are just frankly at different levels of preparation, right? Some guys prepare really fast, some guys it takes a little bit more time, and all of a sudden you're playing games that matter, and it's been pretty crazy. So that element of it makes puts it across the board. And Spencer Horwitz and Team Israel got off to a good start with their win over Panama, comeback win for them. And he's somebody who was really opening some eyes at Blue Jays camp with quality of at bats, ability to control the strike zone, really smart swing decision makings, a little bit of pop there too, just a good all around hitter. And that's what helped land him on the 40-man roster this offseason. He's someone that has a chance to contribute to the Blue Jays at some point this year because of that profile. So Uh, you know, a lot of players get thrown into the fire with this. Some excel, some don't. And, you just think about just how you can get randomness of performance at any point in the season. And then you get that on a grand stage at the World Baseball Classic, which is part of what makes it so electric.
As you mentioned, kind of the step that Spencer has taken forward from his time, even in Buffalo last year, he kind of burst onto the scene here right around July 1st or so, and took off and really excelled here at AAA. And taking that in the next drive, I feel like there's a lot of names. I know Addison Barger is one of the hot commodities now, so to speak, and raising his profile with how he performed, not only going multiple levels last year, but now continuing a lot of that progress here in spring training in 2023.
Yeah, and it's been funny hearing John Schneider talk about him and the way it's changed over the course of spring. Right, beginning of camp, it was jokes about how tight the shirts that Addison Barger was wearing, it the way that he was bulging out of them with his very impressive physique. But then he's just hitting, and he's got no fear, and he's up there to do damage and to attack. And there's still some people who wonder if the big leg kick and might have to be tweaked in some way when he gets to the big leagues. But people are talking about it in when he gets to the big leagues, not if he gets to the big leagues. So he's somebody who right now is probably just waiting for an opportunity, and whether that's somebody struggling or an injury or something else, he's someone who's very much put himself on the radar. The amount of power is sticking out to people, but there's also just an intelligence of approach and a fearlessness that you see with that is very common to big league players, right? That he just has that air about him where he believes he belongs and he believes he's going to succeed. And a lot of times that's half the battle.
And how important is that for a Toronto Blue Jays team, is to kind of look at the Bison's parent club a little bit, who has big expectations, not only to make the postseason, but to maybe contend against the Yankees for the AL East and make a postseason run, because of, we see the offseason moves the Blue Jays made. This isn't a team that just wants to make the playoffs. They want to make a run.
Yeah, well, Pat, as you well know, and you see it in postseason teams year in, year out, it's not just a 26-man roster that gets you there. It's the 40-man roster. It's the level of depth that you have. And, the one thing that the Blue Jays have been seeking to do over the past few years, and it's been taking steps each year, is just building out the depth and putting their roster in a situation where they have more players who deserve at-bats than at-bats to give them, and more relievers and starters who deserve innings than they have innings to give. And this might be the best year for them from that perspective. You think about some of the guys who are going to be at AAA Buffalo, barring surprise or a couple of late spring injuries. You could see guys like Nate Pearson and Zach Pop and Trent Thornton at AAA. There's some really interesting non-roster arms specifically in terms of the two Julian Fernandez and Julian Fernandez, just big velo arms who could be factors. Hagen Danner, depending on how the Blue Jays go with them, he could be at Buffalo or maybe start at New Hampshire, then up to Buffalo fairly quickly. Another really big arm who's got a chance to factor this year. There are a lot of possibilities for this team of guys who are going to be able to contribute if needed. And the Blue Jays have traded a lot of talent over the past couple of years to help bolster the big league club from the minor leagues, and that's maybe thinned out some of their prospect rankings, but they still have a lot of those players who can come in and contribute and maybe do a little bit more than that. And that's what you need to be a contender, because, we know the best laid plans, they don't just get torn up. They often get shredded by 162 games. So, we'll expect that the Blue Jays will have to dip down into Buffalo a fair bit over the course of the year. They obviously hope that's not the case, but very rarely can teams avoid that. And those players will be essential to ensuring that the Blue Jays are able to reach some of their goals this year.
Can another player that could be added to that list is somebody like Nathan Lucas, who was the AAA, MVP of the Bisons last year, and now back with the Blue Jays again, I believe added to the 40-man roster and just continues to excel at AAA.
He's a guy, depending on how things break, that could end up being on the big league club to start the season. Sense I have at this point is maybe Otto Lopez is perhaps a bit ahead of him from a handedness perspective. He fits a bit more of what they need and can move around the diamond, where Lucas is outfield only. But in talking to some people, they felt that he probably should have been called up last year, and he had certainly earned it, and that he probably would have contributed, and that the Blue Jays are pretty excited about him and what he brings to the table. So he's definitely someone who put himself on the radar. The Blue Jays, when they added him to the 40-man roster, he had a chance to, become a minor league free agent, and they didn't want that to happen. So they made sure to add him to the 40 quickly and keep him around just because of how strongly they feel about him. And now, again, he's another outfielder who's going to be at Buffalo waiting for an opportunity. But he's someone who, when the time comes, the Blue Jays feel very confident can be a contributor for them.
And I look at the minor league schedule now here in AAA, and we know that the changes to the 40-man and who could be called up on September 1st have forced really AAA baseball to go almost the entire length of the major league season. And how nice it is for a parent club to be able to just go down to AAA and say, you're still playing games on September 22nd, come up and join us, instead of having to sit on the bench and watch games as they go on, and how that can really help a team out the stretch of the season, especially pitching-wise, when we know how important it is in the final month of the year.
Right, and you've created that alignment. And, I'm in maybe the minority. I'm not sure if it's a minority, but I'm of the opinion that they should have more than just a couple September call-ups and expanding the rosters. I mean, I think it got a bit ridiculous when teams were carrying 40 guys, and the Blue Jays did this in 2019 when they brought up everybody who was on the 40-man roster and trying to keep everybody around. That was probably going too far, but there is value to giving some players a bit of that experience and having them be around it and taste it. And, there's probably a happier medium there, but it's definitely advantageous to have guys continue to throw. And, what the Blue Jays had done in years past when, AAA Buffalo was done for the year, is that they were sending guys to Florida, down to Dunedin to keep training and kind of stay in shape. But that's not game speed. That's not game reps. It's just not the same thing. And now, if there is an injury, guys are just in better conditioning, and they can jump up and they're in a position to hit the ground running, where before that wasn't the case as much. So, there's certainly some logic to it from that perspective. But, I do think that the September call, the reduction in September call-ups, while understandable and sensible, there might have been a happier medium way to do it as well.
Yeah, and certainly here at AAA, the season longer and 150 games now instead of 140. So that's an adjustment period for players. And I was talking to Joe Sclafani just about a week ago, and of course, Ricky Tiedemann's name came up because of how well he performed in spring last year and how well he pitched in the regular season last year in the minor leagues, and kind of what the expectations are for him in his second full season of professional baseball. What are kind of your expectations of the step forward he might need to take this year?
I don't know that it's so much he needs to take a step forward as in he just needs reps to build up, right? A lot of people like to make the Alek Manoah comparison with him, but Alek Manoah had 3 years of college baseball under his belt when he got into pro ball and had really had a buildup in college, so that when he got into pro ball, the grind of that, even though it was interrupted by COVID, it wasn't as new to him. Whereas, Ricky Tiedemann had essentially lost his high school senior season due to COVID. He had thrown 36 innings in total in junior college when he got drafted. And last year he had roughly 80 innings, and that was a first for him. And so the Blue Jays have to be cognizant of building him up in a way that he's able to be a starter who can haul some innings down the road. And that's really one of the primary challenges. I mean, we've seen the stuff this spring. It's big league caliber. It is better than big league caliber, right? He's very few guys can match his repertoire, but he needs some more game experience and he needs that physical buildup. So one of the challenges for the Blue Jays this year is how do you manage his workload in a way that you could have him perhaps available to the big league club for late season contributions and that he can stay ready into the postseason potentially. And that's why I think we'll see a lot of short outings at the beginning of the season, just as a way to keep that workload down, a steady build, adding some innings towards the back end of the year. And then maybe he ends up in the big league bullpen. Maybe he ends up in the rotation if they need it, or in some sort of hybrid kind of role. You think about David Price's debut with the Tampa Bay Rays years ago. That might be a bit of a model, but that is really where Ricky Tiedemann is. It's just more reps and game experience, which you can't simulate. And then how do you get the workload up to a point that, next year you can throw him out there without having to worry about the reins being so tight.
As we mentioned Ricky Tiedemann, you mentioned Hagen Danner a little bit, and I think of some of the pitchers that were here last year in terms of Hayden Yinger, who came up from Double-A and pitched so well, high round pick, and how they worked with Casey Lawrence, who was, in essence, at some points, a second pitching coach for the Bisons. And not only was his story so great of going back to the big leagues, but I think about the value in having Casey back in the organization again and being able to work with not only the pitchers, but even at times some of the young catchers who we've seen learn from Casey in the course of a year.
He's really the type of guy who's so important. You saw him jump up last year and eat some innings in key spots for the Blue Jays. And, on a different club, he might have even gotten more of an opportunity, a little bit more run than that, because he'd pitched so well at Buffalo. But the personality, the knowledge, the life experience, the willingness to give himself to his teammates, all that stuff really matters. And I believe that he had a few opportunities to go pitch overseas in Asia this year. He's ended up back here in the role that he was in last year, and good for him. I remember years ago him. I'm not sure if he started this game or not, but he was with the Blue Jays, up with the Blue Jays. I think 2018 it was. In St. Louis, he came up for a series, and that series it was Chris Coughlin ended up doing the somersault over Yadi Molina into home plate, and it was just kind of a crazy series. And he found himself up there. He started against the Angels too. So he's lived this life for a long time. He's been around, seen a lot of stuff. Every organization needs that type of guy. Drew Hutchison is back in the organization. He'll play a role akin to that as well this year, and that's part of the depth that we were talking about earlier, and just how much it matters is having those guys around who can contribute. And it's not just being insurance in case something's needed at the big league level. You want some guys who are going to be able to contribute positively to the younger players as well. And we know that AAA can oftentimes be a difficult level because everybody believes that they deserve their shot to be in the big leagues when they're there, and rightfully so. They should be their competitors, but that can be tough. And having guys there who can explain to the younger players how to have the right mindset and how to focus on themselves and on the team and make sure that they're contributing in a positive way is really important.
And I think also someone like Casey Candahl, who will be back as the manager of the Bisons this year, and went up and I thought performed well under John Schneider in the interim role as bench coach last year. He's really a guy that knows how to manage personalities. And what did you see from Casey in his time in the second half of last year in the big leagues and how he kind of worked with some of the young players?
Not just the young players, with some of the more veteran guys too, right? They all respect him. They all love him. They know that he's a guy who's been through it. He's been through it at the big league level, been through it at the minor league level. A guy who really wants to be there, who's positive and wants to contribute. He's a guy who makes people around him feel good. He brings energy, he brings positivity, he brings determination, he brings competitiveness. All those little factors matter, right? And Pat, I know you've heard this saying where you say be the same guy every day, and that's players try to want that of one another, want that of their coaching staff, and Casey's certainly a great example of that. There's a steadiness there, there's a determination. He wants to get after it, he wants to battle the other teams, but he's also got a lightness to him, a positivity, the ability to make people around him feel great. And that's what I remember seeing from him. He joined the Blue Jays at a very difficult time. Mark Budzinski, the first base coach, he had just lost his daughter, was coming back from that. Charlie Montoyo had just been fired. The team wasn't performing well. There were just a lot of difficult things for people to deal with. Everybody was frustrated with the situation. And John Schneider helped turn things around, but Casey Campbell was a big part of that as well.
And I know that the coaching staff rounded out with guys like Jeff Ware, who are joining as a bullpen coach this year. We know Don Mattingly will serve as the bench coach under John Schneider now, and somebody that John really have tried to emulate his baseball life after as well a little bit. What are maybe now as the full-time manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, Dunedin, what is John Schneider's kind of attitude this spring in Florida in getting ready for his first year as the full-time manager of the team?
One of the real focuses once he took over and the points of emphasis was just attention to detail, and that every little thing matters in a baseball game. We saw that cost the Blue Jays time and again last year, and that's really been something that's been hammered home right from the beginning of camp. And you've really even seen it in the way that things like pitchers fielding practice and bunt defense and base running drills have been run during camp. And he's gotten buy-in, which is super important because, guys aren't just doing the drill in a, hey, let's do this and get the hell out of here kind of way. It's been a lot of energy, and that, they're hooting and hollering when someone makes a really good play on a bunt drill, for instance, and then they're getting on somebody if he doesn't do it right. And that energy, that investment in that's important, because if you're not invested in it in April, it's probably going to show up in August in a way that you don't want. And we'll see whether the reverse holds true as well, that the energy that they put into those drills now shows up positively when it matters down the road. But that is the thing that stuck out to me when I was at spring training, is just the amount of energy and the amount of focus on the really mundane. And that's really where things are at for the Blue Jays. They lost a lot of games in the margins last year, 2021, 2020. And, it was almost like you could see the talent, but they would do one stupid thing every game, and it would end up biting them in the butt. And, the talent is there. They've gotten better. You're not really going to get a lot better from a talent perspective on that roster. It's really just executing at a higher level. And that's what John Schneider has been focused on, ensuring that they can get that level of execution and do it in a consistent way and not give anything to the opposition.
And Shi, I know one of the big questions in the offseason was going to be, would the Blue Jays be able to flip some of their depth from that catching position where you had Alejandro Kirk, Danny Jansen, and Gabriel Moreno at the time in the organization? And they did that, moving Moreno to Arizona and getting Dalton Varsho back in that deal. What did that kind of signal to you, maybe, or just kind of the with moving Moreno, what it means for the catching position and even for Varsho as he settles in with the Blue Jays?
It's interesting. It's a couple things, right? If you think about the way their position player core is set up, they needed someone in the outfield who had a bit of extended control, right? That they started the offseason with two guys who were pending free agents at the end of this year in Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel. And they had George Springer, but George Springer is now halfway through his big free agent year. So free agent deal, excuse me. So, the clock was sort of running out on him. So they needed another piece that they could throw in there and have a little bit of stability. And they had so much surplus at catcher, it was the obvious place for them to trade from. But the Blue Jays really put a lot of emphasis on what their catchers do and how much They contribute to pitcher game planning, handling of pitchers, obviously their usage in the role. And the fact is that they had the duo of Jansen and Kirk was, if not the best, if not the most productive. It was right up top in terms of production, both offensively and defensively, behind the plate last year. So, trading one of those guys would have been very difficult because Moreno just has a lot of growing pains to go through, and that it would have taken some time for him to get up to that level. And for a team that's competing, it's pretty hard to have a catcher who's, not able to hit the ground running. And it's not Moreno's fault. Like, he's very talented. He's going to be good in the big leagues, but it's just going to take time. Very few guys can be Adley Rutschman, and the Blue Jays needed him to essentially be Adley Rutschman as their or something akin to that, to just stay in the running at the big league level, from behind the plate and not lose anything there. And the Blue Jays really like, obviously, what Alejandro Kirk brings, both offensively and defensively. They really place a huge value on the role Danny Jansen plays with that pitching staff, and he hits a ton as well. And so, the Blue Jays used some of that surplus to get a piece that they need. Dalton Varsho is going to be a good player for them. He's going to change the dynamics of their outfield defense, and they believe that he's got a little bit more in his bat as well than he showed in Arizona. And so, this is a trade that has the potential to hurt them, because Moreno could very well become an all-star eventually with the Diamondbacks. But the Blue Jays are living in the here and now, and Varsho, Kirk, and Jansen, that combination is right now far more important for them.
The last thing I want to ask you about it, and thanks again for taking the time to join us today, is Cavan Biggio, a player who came down to Buffalo last year. He was on a rehab assignment at one point, even then optioned to the Bisons, and really performed well. It seemed like he found his stride a little bit last year, and he's taken that now into spring training this year. I don't know if rejuvenated is the word, still as a young player in his professional career, but it seems like he is really finding a home around the diamond, even with the Blue Jays.
Right. And that's a difficult role, right? Where, he was somebody who thought he was going to be an everyday second baseman in the big leagues. And then he's been asked to bounce around, and he's been asked to be ready to go without a guarantee of daily at-bats. And he had come out of his approach at different points, and really he had to buy in to that role and accept all the challenges. And when he came up towards the latter part of last season, when he came back from Buffalo, he had talked about how embracing it was important for him, and that mattered. It was freeing for him. And instead of worrying about where am I at and trying to play his way into this, it was just about excelling in his role in a given day. And so he's just created multiple pathways for him to be a contributor. And he's always been someone who really well regarded for his presence in the clubhouse and his contributions as a teammate. It's just really been finding a bit of a niche for him at the big league level. And he seems to be finding that niche. He's accepting that niche. John Schneider has been with him for a long time and really values everything that he can bring, not just on the field, but off the field too. And having someone who's got his back in that way, a supporter of him, someone who he's got some trust with, someone that there's a two-way relationship there that's important. I think that's allowed him to be freeing. And Cavan Biggio is one of the guys who helps you get there, is the description I've often heard of him. And I think people will look at the numbers only and say, make a determination about his value just solely based on his numbers. But I think the things that he brings to the table go well beyond his numbers, and he'll be an important contributor for the Blue Jays this upcoming season.
Look forward to seeing how the 2023 season plays out, Shi. Thanks for taking the time for joining us in Arizona, and looking forward to seeing you here in Buffalo at some point this season.
Absolutely. Love coming down to Buffalo. Can't wait to get there, and we'll look forward to it.
Looking forward to seeing Shi here down at Sahlen Field throughout the course of this season. Looking forward to seeing you here at Sahlen Field here in 2023 as we get you set for the start of the year here and countdown to opening day, presented by Alexandra's Homestyle Pierogi. Don't forget to try Alexandra's Homestyle Pierogi at their new stand in Section 100 behind home plate here at the downtown ballpark. Coming up next week in the offseason hot stove, we'll check in with the general manager of the Herd, Anthony Sprague, to preview some of the great promotions here in downtown Buffalo this year. That's coming up next time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Pat Malacaro.